Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted that we're joined today by Dan Watt. Dan has produced a wonderful movie called Everybody Dance, which is about an inclusive ballet school. I've watched it. It made me cry. Fantastic movie, Dan. And I love the fact that we're interviewing you as part of the Access Chat community because one of our former guests came to me and said, you really should interview Dan. So it's really a serendipity that we have you on today. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to make this wonderful film, Everybody Done?
Yeah, well, I actually started out as a dancer and in musical theater. I started when I was 15 and was very lucky to have some amazing teachers and have the opportunity to dance in dance companies back in Cleveland, where I'm from, and studied in New York. Our dance teacher took us to New York every summer, the ones that she felt had potential to show us the real world, and to say, you know what, you need to be in New York because that guy next to you is the guy going to be at the audition you're going to be at. So do you think you can outdance him? So, and then at about the age of 21 or 22, I moved to LA during that Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson video time and got in two dance companies out here, one called On Our Toes, which was a touring company. And then I also was able to perform with the Joffrey Ballet whenever they came to Los Angeles. For about 8 years, I did Petrushka, Taming of the Shrew, all the big ballets with them. And then I moved on to, as I got older, I started choreographing. And then I went on to directing and producing musicals. But I always had a love for television and film. And I don't know over in the UK and other parts of the world if people know who Phil Donahue is or Merv Griffin. And I used to love the Phil Donahue show because he would bring up a topic and they would discuss it for an hour. And I would come home from school and watch that. And my mom would be like, why aren't you outside playing? I'm like, Phil Donahue's on, and I would watch a talk show, when I was in sixth grade. So I thought, well, let's get into film and television and see what happens. So I was lucky enough that the second place I applied was Columbia Pictures on the Sony lot, and they hired me. And they said, you know everything about producing. We just have to take everything that you know about producing and apply it to film and television. So I was lucky that there was a guy there who could see my potential, and they hired me in film development. And the first movie I worked on was from beginning to end was House Bunny with Anna Faris. You'd have to, for your younger audience, they can Google it, but she's absolutely amazing. And what a great movie to start on. I worked there for 5 years, worked on the Jennifer Aniston rom-coms also. And after 5 years, I moved on to Simon Cowell because I loved, like going back to like Phil Donahue, I loved true stories and documentaries. And he was going to do a documentary on the band One Direction, which he had just put together. And he said, well, let's just follow him and see if anything happens. This is before they blew up. And he was just, let's just see, film them and see what happens. Well, you know what happened. But so I worked the documentary there. And I met Morgan Spurlock, the late Morgan Spurlock, who was an amazing documentary director. And after 5 years with Simon, I decided I wanted to tell stories that I felt needed to be told and had a little bit more meaning, at least in my eyes. And I said, I want to go out on my own. And he said, do it. And he was like my little mentor and held my hand through the entire time. Whenever I would text him crying, he'd answer. And I said, I wanted to do a movie about the arts. I knew it had to be something that I knew because when you're going out in the world the first time, I don't have the Simon Cowell name or the Columbia Pictures umbrella anymore. People aren't going to answer the phone anymore. I'm just Dan Watt. I'm not Dan Watt from Simon Cowell's office. Those are two different people. So I wanted to do a movie about how people who studied the arts applied what they learned in everyday life. Did your mom and dad make you take piano lessons or singing lessons or speech class? You didn't make a career out of it, but what lessons did you learn about that? And I then had a dream because during my transition period from becoming a dancer, I also became a dance teacher and ran the South Bay Conservatory. And there was a mom there who had two girls, and they both had autism. Well, I knew nothing about it. We're talking, this is 20 years ago. So I had a dream about Fran and her two daughters. And I thought, well, this is weird. Why am I thinking about this? And I didn't give it any any more thought. And then I had the dream a few weeks later about her again. And I thought, this is somebody sending me a message. This is, God poking me saying, this is your movie. I'm telling you how to do it. It's still about the arts and how you take what you learn in the arts and apply it to everyday life. But I'm going through the eyes of kids in families with disabilities. So I trusted my gut and I went with it. And then I just started out on my journey trying to find that school or conservatory or community that had that. And now I have an Emmy-winning movie.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to have you here. It's not, we always enjoy when we have people that work in cinema and do some work in terms of representation. We have great guests in the past talking about this topic. So, going directly to my question, how can filmmakers and creators can ensure that they are centering on disabled voices rather than in speaking for them? And what did you learn about consent and autonomy while making Everybody Dance?
Well, I made a very conscious decision. Well, first, I found Bonnie Schlachte, who is the owner and founder of a studio called Ballet for All Kids. They teach all styles of dance, but they focus on ballet. And what makes them so special is it is a full 1 hour dance class. That when I was doing my research, it took about 8 months to find the right place. There's a lot of parks and recs and other studios that offer 10 minutes of dance, and then they do gymnastics, and then they do, something else, which they all serve the right purpose. I'm not putting them down. I'm just comparing. But Bonnie taught a full ballet class, and I was hoping to find that. But I met with her, and it took a while for her to agree to it. And then I had a meeting with some of the parents, and then we met again because I wanted to make sure when I approached the movie, I wanted to go in and be a fly on the wall. I wanted to make sure because I'm neurotypical, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes or present the story in the wrong way. So what I did is the entire movie is these kids and these parents telling their stories in their words, and it's on their timeline. So I just documented them. I gave them the platform to tell their stories, hoping that the world and people would see that, notice the similarities, focus on the similarities. These kids came together with one thing in mind. They were coming together to learn choreography and put on a show. That's it. Nothing else mattered after that. So I just wanted to make sure that I just presented their stories. So, I followed them for 10 months to make sure that I got as much as I could covering it. Bonnie and these families put a lot of trust in me. And I always made sure, and when I was editing it, I also made sure to ask parents if there were questions that I had about it. And if there was a scene that I wasn't sure should be in there or not, I would have my editor pull that scene and I would send it to the parents and say, do you want to show this side of your child? In the movie, there's a part where when we're at it's the day of the show, and my cameramen are backstage, and one of the girls with autism, gets excited and amped up, and she's nonverbal, and she started just hitting one of the assistants. But that was her way of communicating, and the assistant knew how to handle it, and they sat down together and they played games, and he was able to calm her down. Well, the parent said to me, yes, please include that, because we want the world to see that this is one way a nonverbal person with autism expresses themselves. So this is part of our everyday life. But I wanted to make sure, because this girl is now going to be in a movie, that they were okay with it. So I took that part of my job very, very seriously.
Which is probably why you won an Emmy.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Dan, I want to tell you a quick story and then ask you how parents are responding to it. I have a daughter with Down syndrome. We lived in Florida and I put her in ballet school right from the beginning. Found a really nice little dance school and they included her, but what they did do, which I was disappointed, but that's okay, was they sort of created her own dance. So they didn't really put her in the classroom with the other girls. They sort of did her own and she would go out and they'd make a big deal about it. And I appreciated it. But at the same time, I actually wanted my daughter to be in the class. But that's okay. Then I relocated to Virginia and I started asking around and I asked this one, I tried to enroll in this one dance company my daughter, and they told me that they did not include people like that. And I remember, this was in 1994, and I remember being really, really sad about that because I liked living in Virginia, but it just made me really sad. And then, of course, what happens is you've talked about dreams and the universe talking to you. I happened to be going somewhere and I took my daughter to an ice cream place. And as we were getting ice cream, this really cute little girl, little 16-year-old woman behind the counter said to my daughter, "Hey, do you like to dance?" And she starts talking to her, invites her to Regency Dance Studio in Richmond, Virginia, and she was totally included, and she danced for another 8 years, and it scared me when we weren't included, honestly. I thought, "Where have I moved?" But at the same time, when we were, and then we were including in such a more powerful, beautiful way, it meant everything to our family. First of all, I wanted to say that, Dan. So thank you for this film. I actually also loved House Bunny. Love it, love it, love it. It was a silly but powerful, powerful, empowering movie. And yeah, it's sort of silly, but it's teaching women to appreciate who they are. So love it. But I just wanted to thank you for that. And I can't wait to watch it. I will be watching it tonight on Prime. But how are you? Are other families coming out and telling you stories like that? Because it's hard not to be included. It hurts us a little bit.
Well, and there's some of those stories are included in the film. There's a wonderful Jamie whose daughter Allie is in it, and I'm still friends with a lot of the parents and kids and talk to them all the time.
But
But with Ailey's mom went through the same thing. Went to her school called her in and was saying we don't know what to do with your daughter, and then also going to a studio or a Parks and Rec where it was just then there wasn't enough activity to keep up with her energy. And then she found Bonnie in Ballet for All Kids, and then everything changed. And again, what's also great about Ballet for All Kids is everyone is invited. You don't have to have a disability, neurotypical people can go. And what makes it great is you can walk by the window and you don't know who's who. It's just a dance class. And
family,
Bonnie, exactly. And what Bonnie did is because, we all learn it at different levels, different speeds, different, I worked with the football team at a high school because they wanted to make them a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, agile on the field and be able to go from side to side. And I worked with them for 8 weeks. So here are these, I'm working with these muscular guys who move different than somebody who's studied dance forever. And it was my job to help them learn how to move side to side, front to back, front to back. And you just adapt your lesson plan for those type of people. You know,
for the humans in the room.
Exactly. It's for everybody. It's like when I taught, and Bonnie does this too. But I took this is why teachers are so important when you find the right teacher. My teacher in Cleveland presented visually see her, you could hear her, and you could also, then is it left, right, left? Okay, that works for me. Or is it the ba ba ba? Is it watching? And as any teacher, it's our job to find the way in. And this is for any child anywhere. It has nothing to do with disability. It's our job to try what is going to make Deborah understand this. Is it left, right, left? Is it just watching me? And Bonnie is brilliant at that. And
The different learning styles. And also, Dan, I wanted to say that when that one studio rejected us,
Mhm.
they blamed it on the other parents. They said our parents would not want their daughters dancing with her. I mean, they were so blatant about it. I can get emotional now. It's ridiculous. So Thank you.
Well, and when I was teaching these two girls, I knew nothing about, I mean, I had heard the word, but I didn't study anything about it. All I did was I talked to Fran and she explained to me, like the one daughter was sensory sensitive. And she said, just don't touch her arms. When you're going to correct it, just show her what she needs to do to adjust her arm. Just don't touch her. And I said, okay, that's fine. Well, again, everybody learns at a different pace. Antonio here might pick it up quicker than Neil. Well, that's okay. It's then just repeating it. It's
I
working
do
with
have two left feet.
it.
So
Well,
into,
I knew
That's
Antonio.
probably true.
So it's just treating everybody the same and with kindness and empathy and understanding and just helping them learn it. And Fran told me that she knew the girls weren't going to progress to Jazz 2 as quick as most people, that it would be a little slower, but they all understood that. Well, that doesn't have anything, again, to do with autism. Again, we all learn at different speeds. I still don't understand math. Okay. This A plus B equals C to me is silly. A plus B equals AB because you have an A and a B, so now you have an AB. I don't care. You can say C all you want. It doesn't make sense to me. And by the way, I don't need to worry about it anymore.
So Dan, I'm very interested to see how the movie impact changed. After, what type of feedback have you received from people? Did dance studios have reached you out? Because I'm really interested to see how this could somehow improve and make this type of creative spaces more accessible to everyone.
Well, I have gotten many, many messages, through Instagram, Facebook. People have posted and reached out to me. One thing is Bonnie makes it very accessible through her studio, Ballet for All Kids. She's got lesson plans typed out plus music, so you can go there and just get it. But studios have also asked me to come in. So I've helped two studios set up their own program just based on the way I taught and how to just start an inclusive class. But the thing that meant the most to me and to know it made me feel that I did the right thing with the movie is I got comments, and also on like Prime Video is where one of the comments that stuck in my head, a girl said, the arts are for everybody. And how did she say it? The arts are for everybody. And we are given and we are given rights to support and access. Everybody can thrive in the arts. Thank you for making this movie. So it was something along that line. But this was a girl with a disability who watched it and told me, thank you for making this movie. And she also had a paragraph that said, thank you for letting the kids tell their stories. So when you read something like that, then I'm like, okay, I did this the right way. So just by the movie out there to get studio owners and parents to reach out to me and say, hey, can you talk to my daughter's dance teacher and maybe help with this? And also to hear from the disability community that they appreciated it, because it was, like I said, I walked a very thin line and I wanted to make sure I did it right. So to be embraced by the disability community is also a great thing. But going to Bonnie's website, Ballet for All Kids, to know that there's lesson plans and music all ready to go, what an easy way for a teacher to start inclusive classes.
and I think having watched the movie, you're right. You did portray the kids in their own environment, and they were their true selves. But what was great to see was the really positive impact that the school had on them, but also the participation in the dance. So, and not just in their ability to dance, but in their social interactions, their sort of improvements in other areas of their lives as well. And it was great to hear the kids talking about it, how it made them feel more confident and empowered and able to interact better. I thought it was great how Bonnie had this meter square on the floor, right? And the kids would just be ignored if they weren't in the square. And so there was no sort of punishment. It was just that they learned that they weren't going to get the attention if they weren't in the square, and that helped them with their positioning and everything else. So, really using really simple techniques, taped out squares on the floor, enable people to sort of understand the zones that they were in, and so on. So I thought that the work that she was doing was great, and you could see that she had that Bonnie had a love for ballet, but also a love for the community that had been created. And I think the other thing was that it was not a poor area. So quite often the kids that were coming and helping, and the volunteers are kids that live quite gilded lives ordinarily. And so what they were then experiencing as volunteers, they were taking time out from high school, but then they liked it so much that they stayed on, was they were experiencing a side of life that might not have touched them had they not been part of the ballet school. And I think that integration piece within society is super important. As you said right at the beginning, it's not ballet for the disabled, it's ballet for all kids. And so that bringing together of the communities across the social spectrum was, I think, really something that came across well in the movie.
Well, and expanding on what you said, the volunteers, a lot of them go and they have to do a semester to get extra credit or just credit, however it works these days, as a volunteer to graduate from high school now. And okay, well, that's a semester. So that's their, 8 to 10 weeks. Well, then they end up staying for 3 years because they've developed friendships with these kids. And some of them have gone to college and then come back in the summer and worked over the summer and then helped with Bonnie's recital, because it is the arts are, it is a community. It's a way to bring people together. The arts are a great equalizer. Yeah, they teach discipline, focus, social skills, coordination, but it really is a journey of self identity, dedication, and achievement, and to just it, to have a community that comes together all about all the with love. Love is the main thing, and it just is just a wonderful place to be. And everybody uplifts everybody. And we just need more of that in the world. You know? That's why the arts are so important.
My daughter is a dual learning, so she is regular school, but she's also integrated into the music school. On the top of that, she is doing ballet as well. But the calendar and the schedule is overwhelming. And we already mentioned, oh, maybe you could give up ballet because it's just something that you do on the top of everything else. And she doesn't want to give up. So even if the schedule can be really tight, and my wife, we have the responsibility of taking her everywhere, she's basically busy all week, but she's very happy when she's there. So I think that's something we can apply to all kids. So I'm also, with this work, is this make you doing more? What's next for you then in this space?
Well, I have 2 projects I'm working on. I'm actually editing them in the final process and working with my composer on an untitled documentary. That's all I'll say for now. But it's with the Tony Award-winning producer and Pulitzer Prize Broadway producer Gerald Roth. She came on board with the project I'm working on. And I'm also working with Rosie O'Donnell on a different project, and that's focused on autism because her child Clay has autism. And that's focusing there's some online on YouTube, there's these animated series that were created, and Clay, Rosie's child, loves them. And they have, like over 1 billion views. There's 2 of them. There's called Inanimate Insanity and Battle for Dream Island. And they started doing conventions because they got so popular. And I think they've only done them for 2 years. And I went to one of them with Rosie last year, and a third of the audience was people on the autism spectrum. For whatever reason, these animated shows are touching the hearts of these kids, and it's also opening up their lives, where a lot of the kids now are drawing themselves, are taking animation classes, have started creating their own little shows. and some of them have gotten into editing. Some of them love it so much that they're now one child that I interviewed is great, and he's created his own show, but he talks about those shows. And every week he does a different episode. So he writes his own script, and he met other friends through those shows, and they're the producers, they're the editors, and they've all come together. So here's one YouTube show that influenced these kids on the spectrum, and now we have 6 kids with autism now creating their own show about those shows. And so to come together and to just see the parents so happy and excited that these kids have a spark in their life, and it's introducing them to things that they never thought of. So now the kids are taking, script writing classes. How do I write an outline? So then what they learned through that, they're now excited to take English class because they're learning how to write an outline. So it's just all interconnected, and it's just great that these communities have come together. And Rosie's like, I don't know what's going on, but Clay watches it 3 times a day, and now I have to watch it because I don't know what the hell that pencil did, because it's animated objects, and there's a fight between the pencil and the sponge, and now I have to discuss it with her. So so now Rosie and I are watching all of those shows because for whatever reason, it just triggered something in these kids in a positive way, and it's like, we got to tell this story. So then I'm doing that.
And so I look forward to watching that when it comes out, Dan. So I think that technology does play a real role in sort of media inclusion, and I think that we've seen the sort of flowering of people's creativity through some of these things. And I know that when we were talking before we came on air, I talked about how in a previous life I'd worked in sort of sci-fi memorabilia and gone to lots of Star Trek conventions. There were a lot of autistic and neurodivergent people at those conventions as well, and how much joy there was in these places. We've unfortunately reached the end of our allotted half hour for the show. So keep on going for a long time. So I need to thank you, of course, for coming on, being our guest and sharing your wonderful work, and also to thank Amazon for sponsoring us and keeping us on air. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.